You are listening to Larry Conners, USA.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Conners USA. Larry Conners USA.
Without order, there's no justice. We can't have a society without order. And we have decided to hire law enforcement officials to maintain order. We hire whites, blacks, browns, men, women to maintain order. Many of our law enforcement agencies are majority minority. And if you decide, just like you want to judge someone solely by the color of their skin, if you do want to make a pejorative judgment about a cop, right. I'll put it this way. If you hate cops just because they're cops, you don't know anything about them, then next time you get in trouble, call a crackhead.
Call a crackhead. April 14, 2021. The words of Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana. And, of course, he's referring in part to Congresswoman Tlaib and others who called for not just defunding police, but ending all policing, saying we don't need policing. If that ever happens, we have total anarchy throughout our country. It's already tough enough to get officers to stay on the job. If they can find something else, they're leaving. If they're close to retirement, they're, in many cases, deciding to do it early, unless they can get a good, safe job inside, because on the streets it's gotten extremely dangerous. Yes, the episode of what's happening in Minnesota still under inquiry. The riots continue for a third night. And all of that, of course, traced not to the Derek Chauvin trial, which also continues, but from 10 miles from that courtroom is where the shooting went down Sunday afternoon when police officers stopped a car at expired tags. And inside the car was a 20-year-old black man, Dante Wright. They did not know at the time they stopped him, but as they're running a check, and he probably knows they're going to find out, they've got him outside the car, and they're starting to cuff him, and suddenly he starts fighting to get away. With all we're hearing about what the officer did, and the officer is going to be held accountable, I'll tell you how in a moment, or at least he's going to be facing some accountability. His effort to resist the officer at that point, it went bad. That is not a good thing. I don't care what your color is, what the color of the officers are. I am very careful. If I'm stopped by officers, I always have my hands in clear view. Oh, but Larry, you're a white guy. Doesn't make any difference. Officers get shot by black, white, yellow, old, red, kids. So that was the first thing he failed to do. But then, of course, we have the situation that his background has more to it than what it looked like at that point. That doesn't mean he could have been shot and should have been shot on the street for what I'm going to share with you later in the next 2 hours. That's not a justification. But it's also, again, the officer did it by accident. She said, taser, and instead pulling the taser, pulled her pistol. Now, if someone said with it been white, she wouldn't have made the mistake. In other words, they're saying it's intentional. The officer, who is 25 years on the service, is now expected to be charged with second-degree manslaughter. That sounds appropriate for what happened, and she knows it. She's resigned. The police chief has resigned. We're going to get into all of that. And Congressman James Clyburn of Democrat of South Carolina says, I think I know where the next focus on policing should be. You'll be interested in his comments. And Project Veritas, a CNN tech director, how CNN played the game during the election, clear intent to defraud the public and give false information and build up Biden all the time, and they have another target in mind. And a Pelosi book out that shows that she tricked Republicans into electing her the first time around, a trick that would be used against her now, maybe by members of her own party. It might still once this becomes public. We'll get that story for you. And Dr. Fauci on halting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. He says there's a good reason. If you think the public's going to be frightened by it and maybe more concerned about vaccines, he says that's actually going to be the opposite. It proves we're doing everything to protect the public. Do you agree? You're going to hear from Dr. Fauci a little bit later. And there are new developments reference the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter group buying those numerous mansions, at least 4 different homes, one of them for $1.2 million. The New York City BLM leader wants an independent investigation, wants to know exactly how that money was spent, where she got it. And the statement from Black Lives Matter about her money, very strange. A lot to cover the next 2 hours. Lock and load. Ready. On the right.
You can email Larry at LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com. LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com.